Craig Bishop and the Council Roundup.
And the Council Roundup brought to you each and every Wednesday by Head West Subs. When you want a great sub, you've got to head west. Their downtown location open for lunch. And don't forget about deliveries, Head West Subs. Last night's meeting was a Springfield City Council Committee of the Whole, and a ton to get to, especially with the conversations about debt forgiveness. They also discussed the transgender issue at the YMCA, or at least they had some citizens address the committee. So let's get right on into it. One ordinance that was up for consideration last night dealt with the issue of project labor agreements with city contracts for construction. And this is obviously something we've heard a lot about with big dollar items coming in front of the city council to deal with, building new things and having a project labor agreement saying that they're going to use local labor, they're going to have a certain percentage of minority workforce, and so on. But an ordinance in front of the city council would strengthen the project labor agreement, but also would say essentially that would only be for contracts of $50,000 or more, and that's because there's a threshold at City Hall that allows for the mayor to go ahead and approve contracts that are below $50,000. So Alderman Sean Gregory kicks off the debate with a conversation he has with what he's seeing in this ordinance that he's got questions on.
Public policy. So we have goals of 25%. I think that is a great goal for us to have on our public works projects. I know a year or two ago, Nate gave us some numbers, and we were running about 20%. So this definitely would be an increase. And I do know that from my own personal experience that a union has the capability to reach these numbers. I'm also interested, this number 6 permit contractors and subcontractors to retain a certain percentage of the current workforce. I think that's very, very important to be in this, because I think that's some of the problem is not only within unions but outside of unions, is that a lot of times people who look like me don't get the opportunity. And with this type of language in there and having to retain some of that workforce, it will help us grow in this city.
So again, Alderman Gregory talking about how he likes the idea of having 25% minority workforce baked into this ordinance. Alderman Roy Williams Jr. chiming in with some of his questions.
I don't want to create a monopoly. I think we shouldn't cut out little guys, and we should leave some kind of room. And if you're already doing 98% of the work, what is the purpose of changing this?
So Williams, he also talked about how there's a lot of projects ahead. And why change this when you've got all these projects lined up with City Hall?
We have Legacy coming up, all that activity, the firehouses, which got the groundbreaking was in May, but we haven't started. So I think the little projects, the smaller projects would suffer because, of course, the unions should go after the multi-million-dollar projects, the bigger projects. I just think in Springfield there's enough work for everyone.
So obviously he has questions about why change this now, and he continued on talking about other projects, big-ticket projects that are in front of the city workforce.
The day's coming with Pillsbury. What's going to, as it goes down, and what's going to go in this place? That this is a lot of activity just to say, oh, but that low amount, we got to do a union. Second thing I don't know if your public works enforce this, but we always talk about PLAs, but we don't talk about what's in the PLAs.
So we want to know what is in the PLAs, but it's not just what's in the PLAs, it's how do you enforce this?
I'm trying to understand why we're messing with it. We need to leave it as is. It's been working just fine. And I haven't heard the outcry. But when we do this, I just think it's going to start disrupting and delaying a lot of things. And it's going to drive up the city's costs. I don't care what anybody says.
So Williams Jr. Worried about the costs to taxpayers with this ordinance. He continues on with some questions.
Is it you that is wanting to make this change? Is it your department?
The Public Works.
Well, it's concerning the contracts that come through the Public Works Department. Diversity is a goal that I know that you share with me and with Public Works to bring as many people and provide as much opportunity as we possibly can. And in my view, this helps us achieve those diversity goals.
So obviously a big issue when it comes to union workforce, making sure that they tap into the local minority workforce. And Roy Williams Jr., Alderman, he has a question for the Corporation Council on this issue.
What's changing?
Well, okay, so Section 38.15 of the City Code, as currently drafted, authorizes the city to require PLAs upon making a written determination that it serves the public interest. What this ordinance does is it strikes that language authorizing a PLA and instead requires a PLA for contracts in excess of $50,000, which is the that number was taken because that's the threshold of the purchasing power for the mayor. So any purchases that would go before city council for approval will now be subject to the PLA. And that's where that number came from.
So Roy Williams Jr. was really worried about, this could keep some of the smaller guys who aren't unionized from getting smaller contracts that might be over that 50,000 threshold. Alderman Donnellan chiming in.
What I think the result of it is going to be is the quality of work is ensured. For any major project that's over $50,000. It's going to standardize the procedures. We all know what we'll expect. I appreciate the fact that it is consistent with the city code as far as the mayor's spending ability. I think that means the council's involved. We have a say on projects that are major. And I think the quality is only going to be ensured because of this. That's the way I read the ordinance. So I don't really have a question, just more of a statement. So thank you.
Yeah, again, you've got the support being shown by some, but continued questions by others. Alderman Redpath chiming in, talking about the importance of this moving forward and getting unionized minorities in there.
This is something that was put in place to assure the community that we're getting the best project that we can have. It stops outages. It brings skilled labor to the table. And that's what we really need. We need to make sure that we're giving the best we can to everybody. And that's why I'm supporting this.
So when we hear these big contracts come up, a lot of it seems to be slowed down by the conversation of ensuring that there's a project labor agreement in place. Alderwoman Conley is one of those that drives those conversations, and she sounded off on this last night.
We don't want developers to come in and be like, so what are the rules today, right? This is the rule. This is what we expect. We've had development activity come in. It's been back and forth. Do you have a PLA? Do you not? What have you done so far? This way people know up front, this is what this council wants. These are the expectations. They've been laid out very clearly, dot pointed. And I think it will make it much easier and possibly even smoother and faster for us to get these agreements to go through and to get this development activity started.
So hopefully if this does ultimately pass next week, we won't have protracted conversations and debates about PLAs, which seems to slow down a lot of different contracts that are involved. Alderman Roy Williams Jr., again, continuing on with his line of questioning here.
When we take it down to 50,000, I just think we start getting into areas of simple, common things that people do, maybe even on their personal property or on other things. And so when I look at public works things, there's a lot of little things, from power washing to just a lot of demos, a lot of things that public works can get involved in that we don't need union labor for that. It just doesn't make sense to me. If it doesn't requires some type of expertise and isn't complex like the shields thing we're building or like the firehouses we're building, we shouldn't be taking the threshold so low, and I'll just leave it at that. And
so, again, kind of get an indication of where Roy Williams Jr. is on this. Is Alderman Gregory on page with Williams? While the rest of the council seems to be on this, Alderman Redpath with a suggestion.
We needed to increase the diversity of our workforce in the city of Springfield. But guess what? We need the minority population to go apply for these apprenticeships that they have in I know every union, every one of them is dying to have minority participation. They need them. And I encourage everyone to women and minorities of all kinds to go in and apply for these apprenticeships. They need people. This is an opportunity for us to make a diverse workforce in the city of Springfield.
So, again, it's the idea of you can only get to that threshold of 25% for minority workforce if the minority community gets out there and gets involved. So we'll see how this advances next week. Obviously, a lot of good, important conversation had there. Coming back, we'll hear about emergency medical services and the fire department, plus debt forgiveness for property that's looking to be sold. Stay tuned. A ton more to get to with last night's Springfield City Council Committee of the Whole here with Springfield's Morning News. Brought to you by Head West Subs. When you want a great sub, you've got to head west. All right, back with the Council Roundup with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk, continuing on with last night's City Council meeting, Committee of the Whole, where you had the conversation going on there about ordinance dealing with project labor agreements. But next up, they've got an ordinance up for consideration. Here's the county clerk reading this off.
An ordinance approving a memorandum of understanding between the city from Springfield Firefighters, IAFF Local 37, and the City of Springfield regarding the assignment of new and different duties and responsibilities to bargaining unit employees in connection with providing supplemental advanced life support, ALS, and intermediate life support, ILS, care on private ambulances.
So what this ultimately means is they got to settle something when it comes to private ambulances and firefighters showing up to do the work. And here's the fire chief.
Steve, can you give us just a brief summary of what this does so that it might answer some questions?
Yeah, so the unfair labor practice was filed because we were supplementing care on private ambulance companies.
Right.
We're still doing that to this day. Yeah. And basically we're paying for those additional services that our members are providing.
So obviously, if they're providing these services that the private ambulance group's going to get paid for, we got to make up for that somehow, right? So more from this?
What it was is a shortage of ambulances brought on by the fact that there was a shortage of paramedics. So they could get us an ambulance, but they didn't have the provider on that ambulance. So instead of us going to the house and then our care ended at the house, our guys then would basically be the provider and get in the private ambulance and see that patient all the way through to definitive care.
Alderman Roy Williams Jr. chiming in here with some of his considerations as to what's going on and the importance of this particular ordinance and why it's needed. Here we are.
So
what they bill for.
The union saw it as like a extra duty or something that's outside of the responsibility.
Is that part of? Can I discuss that or? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was a part of the grievance that was in the unfair labor practice that was filed, was they were doing additional duties on the ambulance and not being compensated for that.
Okay. So that's the Corporation Council chiming in there. Alderwoman Conley has a question about kind of what happens if we don't settle this moving forward. Here's Alderwoman Conley.
What sort of complications or implications are there if the fire department were to not send an EMT with us?
So, as an EMT, the highest level of care is responsible for that patient. There's other factors, but if the patient requires advanced level of care, we cannot abandon, they call it abandonment of patient care. So we cannot abandon that patient. So we are then responsible to take that patient all the way through to the hospital.
So it's not really a choice of ours unless the fire department were to stop responding to any medical calls and completely drop our level of service to Springfield.
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
That was a twisty way of me saying.
Yes.
I mean, it is.
Yeah.
But
So obviously, some important implications here with this contract change and the agreements that are being made here to ensure that these services are covered one way or the other, and that they're not just being taken up explicitly by the city and having some kind of coverage of those costs. All right, stay tuned. Coming back, we'll talk about debt forgiveness, and also we'll hear from some citizens addressing the city council based off of what a alderperson said last week in the saga concerning biological males in women's locker rooms at the YMCA. So stay tuned. We'll get to that coming up on WMAY. It's now 7:32. And the Council Roundup brought to you by Head West Subs. When you want a great sub, you've got to head west. Their downtown location open for lunch. Don't forget about delivery. Head West Subs. All right, back with the Council Roundup brought to you by Head West Subs. When you want a great sub, you've got to head west. Their downtown location open for lunch. And don't forget about delivery at West Subs. So we've heard about PLA agreements. We've heard about EMS and firefighters. Now let's talk about alleviating debt of property owners. We heard this debated last week. Well, another ordinance up for consideration at last night's Springfield City Council deals with the issue of forgiving debts for a property owner. Let's hear the clerk lay out the latest ordinance on this issue.
Ordinance authorizing reduction of fines and costs owed to the City of Springfield in the amount of $38,505 for a total payment to the city in the amount of $7,530 to settle Sangamon County Circuit Court Case 19-MR-723, 21-MR-1195, City of Springfield versus Julian Randall and Weed Liens for 2321 South 14th Street.
So, again, you've got some problem property that has liens against it because they racked up tens of thousands of dollars in penalties that they didn't pay. Well, that means that they're not able to get rid of the property as they'd like. And a realtor appeared before the city council last night.
Hello. I'm Carlos Snodgrass.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And I'm a realtor for with a real estate group. And I have been working with Mr. Randall as well as the purchasing party that's wanting to purchase this home. We've been working on this for a month and a half. This woman really wants this home, but until we get this resolved where he can afford this, we're not going to be able to get that home sold.
So how often did this happen during the previous administration? I think that would be interesting to tackle just to compare to what Misty Buscher's planning on doing, because she says all such things are going to have to go through the city council. More from the realtor.
You know, right now we're collecting $337 a year in taxes on that property because it only has $11,000 value. Now, he has now finished the project, and I have photos of what he has done to this home.
All right.
He has spent over $78,000 on this home to fix and repair it because it needed everything. It needed electrical, plumbing, new walls inside, all new windows, the exterior. I mean, he had to completely take down the jungle. I mean, he had no idea how bad this project really, really was. And his current balance, I think, is like $43,000 that he owes the city on a home that's not going to be worth, on average, about $76,000. Now, once this home is sold to my person that's going to buy it, it's now going to have a value of $80,000. Do you realize what that's going to do for just that block and just that area of South 14th Street? The property values are going to increase, as well as the taxes.
So an alderperson later on kind of rebuts that idea. If there's already improvements made, then value's already there. But more on here's Alderman Redpath.
Now, I mean, I realize you guys need to settle this on a case-by-case basis. I mean, he's not somebody out of Chicago. He's not a big investor. He's just a simple man just trying to do the right thing for his community.
And the realtor did admit that the property owner may have done some things improperly and let these fines stack up, but Alderman Redpath jumping in, giving his thoughts about the idea of debt relief.
So who promised him this was going to be forgiven?
It was one of the inspectors.
All right.
What's his name?
I do not have that information.
I won't know what his name is.
Okay. He's no longer with.
Well, he should not be longer with.
Yes.
We don't make those kind of promises to people.
Exactly.
Giving people false expectations is a wrong thing to do.
Exactly.
And I understand the plight that this young man's in and would love to help him, but this is a bad precedent for the city of Springfield.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if there's going to be any profit off this thing, it has to come, if we would forgive any debt, which I'm not going to vote for, it should come back to what he owes us.
And you got to think, too, if this moves through and is approved, what does that mean for others that are out there? Alderman Donnellan giving his 2 cents on this issue.
Regardless of if we forgive this and this ordinance passes or not, that home is still worth $80,000 according to your number because the improvements have already been done. So whether or not it generates tax dollars based on this ordinance is not an accurate correlation. What I'm saying is that property is already worth, the improvements have already been made. It's really that simple. It's whether or not we are, the council, it is in the council's interest, in the city's best interest to forgive debt.
So, yeah, he pushes back against that idea. Well, if we don't forgive this debt and don't sell it, we're not going to get those property taxes. That's not necessarily true. He also talked about the timing of this, how the fines got so high.
This didn't happen overnight. I mean, this went on. In order to get to the point where the numbers are as high as they are, it takes months and months and months.
And he was trying to jump through the hoops.
Yeah, but my tolerance for that is not high because...
And you can imagine, if it's stacking up thousands of dollars of fines, it gets out of control. Alderman Gregory pitching in here.
I can't waste a day on getting properties fixed or either tore down or something because we are slowly but surely falling apart over there. We're trying to fix it. We're on the hustle trying to fix it. We've done some good things, but it's in bad shape, and we need these houses. I mean, I toured like 4 blocks of my ward. I have 38 vacant houses. 38 vacant houses from Lenox to South Grand. And I skipped some. I ain't talking about little grass. I'm talking about nobody lives here, boarded up, causing me fits.
So Alderman Gregory also talked about how he believes we got to the point of tens of thousands of dollars of fines for this property to where it needs to be forgiven.
People from our community don't like going to court. If I wasn't up here and I was in this situation, I wouldn't go to that court date either. Because my mindset would be like, I'm not going to get treated fairly. I get those calls every day. There's a house painted right now in our community. On the side, I've been discriminated against and they took my house. So just as well as somebody, well, he missed court and, he's supposed to be better than that. I get that. Some people can walk that fine line and come in here and talk, and some people can't. Some people are afraid to do that, so they don't. But that's no reason for us to punish this whole community and not forgive this simple debt.
Well, it's just this one person, and I think anybody is intimidated when they go to courts. And if you don't go to courts, you got to pay the piper. I mean, that's just kind of how it works in this society. Corporation Counsel talks about the protocol.
Corporation Counsel's office can settle cases for up to $15,000. So that's the threshold that we have right now. Anything beyond that would need approval, and with the ordinance that's coming down, those type of settlements will need to come through council for approval. So that's going to be the change. But there's no authority to settle it before it gets to my office, and my office gets up to $15,000.
So looking forward to seeing what the outcome of the vote on that next week will be. Moving on, new business. Alderman Hanauer, he wants to make sure people know the city council schedule moving forward.
I'd like to remind everybody that due to National Night Out on Tuesday, our meeting has been moved to Wednesday at 5:30 right here.
All right, keep that in mind because that means we'll have to bump the council roundup to Thursday next week. Alderman Hanauer also given a event update that's involving some sweet corn.
The YMCA downtown, along with the ABC Club and Bob Riding's group, is going to have 2 truckloads of sweet corn at 10 a.m. Saturday, 7/29.
So there you go. If you want some sweet corn, Saturday's the day to go get yourself some sweet corn at the YMCA. But the YMCA was the topic of residents and citizens addressing the council. Rosanna Pluto.
I felt like there was a big gap in the conversation that I heard last week. And so I just want to fill in the gap.
So Alderwoman Notoriano last week really criticized the Freedom Caucus for addressing the issue of transgender individuals in women's restrooms.
What happens to a girl when that happens? You think you had something to do with it? You're ashamed to say anything? You're ashamed to go to your parents? I thank God that Abigail had the courage to say, I'm not feeling good about having a biological male in my dressing room. And as she's 16. As a 67-year-old woman, I do not want a biological male in my dressing room either.
So, again, Abigail Wheeler complained to her coach and the YMCA about a transgender individual in the restroom that made national news, and you had that rally of
I
sorts
today
last
want to
week.
start a Me Too movement, Me Too Abigail movement, because I experienced firsthand sexual harassment at the age of 16. And I just want to say that the rally that happened by the Y, this is the difference I see. These men were on their own time. They are state representatives. They always drive 100 miles all the time. That's their job. They have to drive to the Capitol. And they did it on their own time. They didn't do it on the Springfield taxpayers' dime. They used their own gas. And I think the story here is different. And I just want to apologize to the taxpayers of Springfield that I have to waste your tax dollars when we should be taking care of city business right now, but this had to be addressed. Thank you.
So there you go. There were several other citizens addressing the council, talking about how they felt that the comments from Alderwoman Notoriano last week were demeaning to people who oppose the idea of the 16-year-old girl's feelings of discomfort being pushed aside for the transgender individuals to be able to go into a locker room of their choice. So, yeah, again, it's not the last we're going to hear of that issue either. Obviously, it's a hot-button issue in national debate. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk in the Council Roundup brought to you by Head West Subs. When you want a great sub, you've got to head west. Their downtown location open for lunch, Head West Subs. All right, that's all we got for the Council Roundup today.